Hello, everyone. My name is Kerry Thomas, the founder of Soundness and her dynamic profiling, and inviting you to join with me today in a little brief look into the psychology of the equine athlete. And I'm really excited to share some really important parts of this massively interesting concept and how the psychology drives performance. And so we're going to do this old school style because I'm a paper person. So let's get started and take a look at. We have to answer the question of who is your horse really? Before a horse ever takes a step, they take in a world of information. Before we ever see motion, there is emotion. And before performance can be refined, it must be understood. For more than 30 years, I've studied one central position. I have been hyper-focused on what I call the operating system running the machine, the psychology of that motion and everything between the horse's ears. It's just been a lifelong passion and fascination for me, and I'm happy to be sharing some of that with you today. I want to take you inside that question to explore how Century Soundness and her dynamic profiling are not simply tools for performance evaluations, but their emotional infrastructure to lens through into that veil behind the hidden door of the horse's psyche, that fascinating world that is the mystery of the psychology of the horse. We are wise to remember that performance begins between the ears. A horse does not respond to a cue like a button. They interpret the world through emotional filters, through what I call, again, the operating system running the machine. That is a resounding important thing for you to always remember. That I always tell my clients and friends, listen, with a horse, you're getting the car and the driver. So we are focusing on that driver. Sensory soundness is that operating system, the sensory system. It tells us how a horse processes stress, environment, and emotional stimulus. You can have a perfect conformation and flawless fitness, great pedigree, things of that nature, but if the mind is compromised, you will not be able to optimize the physical talent of the horse. The full talent will never emerge. There is a meaningful difference between being athletic and being an athlete. This is the psychology of performance, not a layer added to the top of training, but the foundation beneath it. So let's take a moment to peer through the herd dynamic lens, shall we? At the core of herd dynamic profiling is the study of the characteristics Mother Nature gave to the horse, the inherent structure, what I call the laws of nature oftentimes, and how those characteristics are being translated into our domesticated world. While there are several ingredients involved, there are two foundational psychological dynamics within every horse that we must begin with. First, we have the individual herd dynamic, or what I dub IHD. This is the focused initiator, the spearhead. IHD creates a one-to-one emotional connection between the horse and a single target. Think linear. The target might be a jump, a rider's cue, a cow, a cone, even the finish line. It can be another horse or a specific task. The IHD operates primarily through the space in front of the horse, that forward aspect. So like I said, think linear and think point to point to point. It is forward driven, decisive, and very purposeful in its execution. Think IHD as meaningful tunnel vision. It is where competitive nature, and this is very important, it is where competitive nature manifests physically in the horse. The IHD cannot navigate the world on its own. And this is where another very important supportive dynamic comes into play. The group herd dynamic, or what I call GHD. This is the stabilizer. This plays a significant role serving as the emotional barometer, the buffer. And GHD is the horse's multi-sensory awareness system. Think airport radar on constant surveillance, everywhere around you, what's going on. It's how they read the room, stay socially connected, the matrix between each other, the communication, and how they manage shifting environments and situational chaos in environments. Where IHD is about one thing, GHD is about everything else. It gathers, absorbs, interprets, and supports decisions. It is the horse's emotional communication headquarters, distributes emotional energy distribution, and supports athletic expression over competitive duration. So it is what helps the horse properly distribute emotional energy into the IHD over competitive duration. And the key thing is understanding, because with even a little understanding of the horse's herd-wired mind, it becomes clear why this matters in performance and has everything to do with it. Again, performance is driven by emotion. We must always remember that. In nature, GHD keeps the horse safe within the herd. IHD, more strongly expressed in the male psychology, is something important to remember because of the roles of herd structure. IHD is the laser target that identifies threats, mates, stragglers, things of that nature, and it's more profoundly expressed in males because of their role in nature is on the circumference of the herd structure. In competition, GHD is the bow, IHD is the arrow. Together they provide total performance capacity. GHD is more of a female expressed characteristic because of their particular role in nature within the herd construct. These are not personality traits. They are psychological roles woven into the natural herd structure. There's a reason for these things. Every horse expresses both IHD and GHD, males and females, the colts and fillies. They all have elements of each, but IHD is strongly shifted in the male psychology with GHD as the supporter element, and females, the fillies and mares, they have a stronger group dynamic, again, because of their roles within the herd construct, and a less defined IHD roles because it only needs to be a prevailing characteristic at certain times. Some horses lead, some anchor, while collectively they interpret. One of the most difficult things that we ask our horses is to operate in isolation. This is really important. I'm going to repeat that. One of the most difficult things we ask the herd-wired mind to do is operate in isolation of that. Removed from the herd structure, isolates and exposes the horse from the emotional camouflage, the all-important emotional camouflage that is provided by their peers, by the network. We are asking, in essence, for an animal designed to live within a socially dependent matrix to train and compete in opposition to their nature. Oftentimes, it's easy to forget that. And less than 5% of horses have the capacity to lead their peers, which means the vast majority are highly dependent on the network provided for them or provided them by their peers or us. This is our responsibility to the horse, being responsible for and accountable to their nature. When we understand where a horse fits, we stop guessing and start connecting. For us to understand where a horse fits, we need to understand the mechanics of how they fit. And this is where it gets really interesting, as if it isn't interesting already. The sensory system is the key to this understanding, for it is through psychosensory processes that the external world is merged with the emotional horse. It is the merger between the external and the internal. This happens continuously. Every horse experiences the world through a predictable 6-step sequence, and this sequence is survey, orient, investigate, absorb, interpret, and hopefully respond purposely. When this sequence is internally interrupted or externally disrupted, instability appears, spooking, freezing, bolting, shutdown. Like static in the line, communication is compromised. Again, think of the network. Their psychology is wired together. You see, each sensory zone, of which there are 6 around the horse's body, carries its own threshold. A stress, what I like to term it, is a stress threshold. And every horse has a preferred entry point into that sequence. We've all walked up to horses and they're more comfortable with you coming into their space from different directions. And there's a reason for that. It's about the efficiency of that sensory processing. Only a very small percentage of horses, typically the upper level herd dynamic psychologies, complete sensory sequencing consistently without a high degree of peer support. So the higher you go on the emotional intelligence totem pole, the higher the horse is on the herd structure, the less outsourcing they need, the fewer questions they ask of their peers. That support is what, that outsourcing is that support, is where that, it's kind of like the help desk. In a way, it's the help desk. It is not a weakness. It is a natural part of the herd wired matrix. It's a really important part of it. And the problem is we try to oftentimes overtrain or override it, and you're contrary to the natural herd structure. For within individual vulnerability lies the tensile strength of the herd. Their need to outsource reinforces mutual dependency. Mutual dependency knits the horses together, and the thread is the sensory sequence. So the mutual dependency is what allows the horses to be together and sustain together. Think of a big puzzle. When we honor the sequence, we create clarity. When we ignore it, we create confusion. This work is not about overcorrecting nature. It is about meeting the horse where it exists and supporting them with purposeful intention. Meeting them where they exist and supporting them with purposeful intention. Not trying to overcorrect what is existing. It's not about fixing behavior. It's about understanding the path of that behavior. And I like to say, though there be one horse in front of you, each horse is comprised of many pieces. I like to use the puzzle reference. I think of a jigsaw puzzle. The whole puzzle, this whole image, as you can see, is the horse, but they're made up of many pieces. And then all those pieces together comprise one horse, and one horse together with many other horses comprise the herd. That is what a horse experiences when emotional gaps interrupt their processing, when they have no buffer to bring clarity and purpose. They have only to react. Parts of the horse, a whole horse. I often refer to these as gaps. These gaps as potholes, kind of like on your road going down the road. These are places where the psyche cannot finish the job. It starts due to the constant disruption of mind to body fluency. Again, a horse in isolation is left to their own devices quite often. These devices can come from associated stimuli, past learned behaviors, influences from the environment, from us. They don't always lead up to productive performances. This is frequently misread, and these issues are frequently misread as stubbornness, resistance, bad attitude, but it isn't. It's an emotional overload when unprocessed stress is carried over one thing to the next. It creates gaps, missing puzzle pieces. So, for example, if you horse is going to an object, just make it simple, and you're riding them along and you go past the cone, right? And your horse has not psychologically processed what that object is, and you're already going to the next one. Well, they may let that go, or they may get stuck to it, be pulling. They may let it go, but even if they let it go and it's unprocessed, now we have a little bit of this unprocessed information in the form of a stress. I like to say a stress ball that gets put into the psyche. And as you go along, the more unprocessed bits in the environment that you encounter, that your horse encounters, it's like picking up potatoes in the field, a sack of potatoes, 1 and 2 and 3. And after a while, that's going to become heavy. And that's going to affect performance. Excuse me, and you can't train over these gaps. The horse may comply when we do that, but they will never fully commit. The mind is doing one thing and the body another. You only have half a horse most of the time, and that's true for anything. We generally only have half the horse for the majority of the time that we're together, because we don't allow them time to have full sensory processing. And if there is no time for that, based on your pace, then we have to be aware of this, that they need that, and when they need to outsource to us. We need to become answering the help desk to help them along with that. We need to know it ahead of time. Performance is not obedience. It is emotional fluency. When you have a good mind-to-body fluency, you can optimize performance. Physical optimization is completely predicated upon the clarity of the psychology. When we nurture the horse, I always say, nurture the horse, develop the athlete. And the reason that I say that is because One of the most underappreciated things with working with horses is that emotional impulse precedes physical action. This is a fundamental law of nature. Emotional impulse precedes physical action. What you see happening in your horses and what you're visualizing and seeing the expressions are, whether they're purposeful or reactive, has already happened psychologically. We often assume that if a horse moves when we cue, give him the trigger, we've done our job. But physical expression is always preceded by emotional impulse. Again, that's repeated because it's so important. I need you to really remember that if you take nothing else away. What we impart emotionally before motion shapes how information is interpreted and responded to. Interpreted and responded to. We have to remember that how information is delivered affects how that information is received. Think about going into your own human meetings, right? If someone asks you to do something or presents information to you in one way, it may be counter to what you're thinking or how you expect to receive it. You can receive it in a different way and have a whole different viewpoint on the actions that they're asking of you. If they do it in a way that is friendly and casual or something that is non-emotionally invasive, you're likely to understand it better and probably try to execute it better as well. If a horse is already stressed before the ride begins, if they have left the moment emotionally checked out, no amount of timing or pressure will bring them back. Physical overcorrecting of emotional issues is not going to be your answer. This is going to add trauma. They may perform through muscle memory and associative aspects, but the competitive clock moves faster than we realize. Duration of focus is among the crucial and measurable aspects of performance. Let me see that again. Duration of focus. The clock is ticking. How much time do I have to optimize performance before stress that I carried through before begins to chip away at that? Every horse only has a finite amount of time of optimizing performance within their performance box. We need to know when to give them mental breaks and when to help them rebalance and start fresh, even within the body of performance, like in the middle of a race. Performance duration is not about how long a horse moves. It's about how long a horse can stay present while they're in motion. At its simplest level, the sensory system exists to clear space for the body to move through, making a hole in the environment for me to move through fluently. Sensory soundness expands that space, the efficiency of the sensory system, how well they can do things on their own, or how well we can support that process while they're in competition or training, and in everyday life, for that matter. Increasing the duration of focus before mental fatigue can chip away and erode total performance capacity. The biggest antagonist to physical performance is mental fatigue, that emotional weight that they begin to carry through the course of a training. In my work in profiling horses, one of my primary things I do, especially looking at yearlings, is to determine, do they have the mental capacity, the emotional fortitude, the sensory efficiency to work in isolation from the herd construct to even become the athlete we hope that they can become, right? There's a big difference, again, between physical talent and pedigree, body structure, and the ability to optimize that. And there's nothing that we can add as far as equipment goes that's going to help that along. Yeah, you can give some guidelines, but really you can't nurture it, because our job is to help the horse bridge those gaps, bridge the gaps in their nature. We are part of our horse's emotional environment. Our tone, our tempo, our emotional energy, these are training aids. These are training assists. When you bring anxiety, the horse absorbs it. When you bring clarity, the horse reflects it. We all know that. Emotional stability is not passive. It is an act of leadership. It's nothing you have to force. It's just something that you become. So be the bridge, not the block, I like to say. And to do this, there are 3 basic principles. So if you want to help the horse bridge the gap and be the bridge for them and not block them further, there's 3 main things to always keep in mind. You lead with consistency, emotional consistency here. You ground with presence, grounding them with your presence. Be present with your horse. Don't be all over the place. When you're with your horse, whether you're standing next to them or 10 meters away, be with your horse. Be present. You ground that. You have a center point for the horse. And then you train with empathy. You don't tell them what to do. You show them what to do, and you do it with them, mentally. That is how trust is earned, and we reach the horse between the ears, connecting who they are with what they can become. Every signature herd dynamic profile for me begins here, in this emotional space that is the conductor of the orchestra. I always like to use it with music because it's like creating a harmony. It's the orchestra. So the conductor of the orchestra, and we then must be the first chair. How I do it? I remove expectations. I set aside labels. I don't want to know anything except for what the horse has to tell me. I allow the horse to tell me who they are and how they're managing and engaging with their environment. How are they communicating with their environment? How are they communicating themselves to the environment? What are they responding to? How long does it take them to process information? Basic information, just nominal information in the environment. How are they processing it? And then increasing the speeds and paces of the stimulus and the horse tells me a lot about how they're processing the world and how this stress accumulates within them and how it can possibly affect them. This is not a checklist necessarily. Rather, herd dynamic profiling is the mapping of the horse's emotional fingerprint. It's the mapping of their psyche. How efficiently sensory data is processed, how they relate to space, pressure, and peers, including us, how stress is internalized, expressed, and carried forward, like we just talked about, and where emotional fatigue begins to erode away performance. That's the thing. I need to know how much time are we working with here before it starts to affect physical motion. We have to know that so that we can circumvent that and begin to expand that time. It's also very important for this in a breeding program to know what these thresholds are. Because when you breed a small threshold to a small threshold, what do you think you're going to get? Pedigree cannot override that. Body type cannot override that. You can't override the laws of nature. This is not psychology for the analysis alone. It is much bigger than that. It is behavioral intelligence in service to the well-being of the horse, first and foremost. This all is about the horse, hence horse welfare and well-being. When you start with that, everything else then can blossom in a safe way. It is how we discover, again, the operating system running the machine. I want you to walk away thinking that. The operating system running the machine. When you look at your horse, how is their operating system running that machine, right? I have a saying that herd dynamics matter. Every horse, every discipline, everywhere. My work starts with the horse. Everything starts with the horse. The disciplines that we have, we created for them. So it has to start with the horse first. That's because this work applies to the horse first and their discipline second, whether your horse is galloping toward a finish line, working your way across the dressage ring, or the cross-country course on your 5-day event. The horse should naturally fit. This is something I feel really strongly about as well. You know, horses should fit naturally where they go and not be asked to fit in where they're going. It's really, really important to consider that. Because no matter the goal, the emotional requirements remain. Stability under pressure, under stress, clarity under motion and under situational chaos. More importantly, because that's the difference between can I handle normal circumstances and environments or can I have presence under that chaos? Really, really important to remember. These things don't happen by accident, they happen by design. The horse has that internal infrastructure inside. And that design begins inside the mind of the horse, because if we're not working with their natural herd dynamics, we are working against them. Well, that's it for this summary of my work and the intricate nature of sensory soundness and herd dynamics, which is, I think, one of the most fascinating aspects of horses in nature and applying their nature to our domesticated world. And if the mysteries of the equine mind and how it affects performance and how it affects breeding and handling and horse welfare also interest you, I invite you to visit my website. We have some great opportunities there for you to expand your information in services and learning library, and my book Herd Wired you also might enjoy. And feel free to get in touch, kerrymthomas.com. And thanks for listening to me, and I look forward to catching up with you soon. Thank you.